Welcome to Finding Family DNA, the show about finding and connecting birth families with your host, Jay Rosenzweig, founder and CEO of birthparentfinder.com. And now, here's Jay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Finding Family DNA. I'm Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of birthparentfinder.com. And as always, we have our co-host, Misty Gillis, from outside the Chicago area. And before we get into our episode, I always want to remind our audience to subscribe to this show. We are still shy of 4,000 subscribers, and we've been at this threshold now for a few weeks. So help us get over that 4,000 subscriber threshold. And again, what it does is it helps fund our pro bono cases. And you all know that some of these pro bono cases are just so amazing and so heartwarming, along with all the other episodes that we show on Finding Family DNA. We sometimes show our pro bonos on this show. And Misty, we have an interesting episode today, and I want to talk about how this guest came to us. And like I said, I get a lot of emails that I just scroll through. Some I don't even look at because some are creepy, to be honest with you. And I get an email from this, I'm not going to mention her name yet, saying that she has a book coming out, and our company is mentioned in the book as a resource. So I said, this is interesting. I'm going to verify and vet this person, make sure it's legit, which I always do. You know that. And I watched her story and I listened to her story on all the formats, TED Talk, other podcasts. And I contacted her and she said she would be on this show. And before we bring her on, her story is interesting because it involves an NPE. She took a DNA test with 23andMe and it revealed a non-paternity event on the paternal side. And Misty, what was episode 30? Remember Lisa Brenner? The same thing happened?
I do remember Lisa Brenner. So she had taken a DNA test kind of just for fun and had discovered that her father was not her biological father. And she discovered that she was not fully Ashkenazi Jewish as she believed she was, and that she was part Irish as well.
Right. Of course, she raised her family Jewish, thinking everything is Jewish heritage. And in her case, she never did meet her birth father because he had already passed. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that was the sad part of the story.
Right. And I know before we got on the air here, I asked you about other cases that we've had similar to this one. And we can't remember anything specific, but what can you tell about some of the other NPEs that we've worked on?
A portion of our clientele that do come to us are later in life DNA testers. And so they end up taking a DNA test because a family member recommended it to them, or they thought it would just be something fun to do. And they made the unfortunate discovery that either their father is not their biological father, or they were actually adopted and they were never told as a child.
And that really doesn't happen that often. And we're going to get into that today with our guest, which we're going to bring in right now. And that would be Maria Leonard Olsen, who is an attorney, an accomplished attorney in the Washington, D.C. area. And we do have some people that we know in common, which is interesting. And you're an author, you're a public speaker, you've done TED Talks, you've done it all, Maria. And Maria, welcome to our show and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And we have a lot of questions for you. And we just want to start off by asking you about your upbringing. And at any point in your upbringing, just tell me the story about how you were raised. At any point, did you feel like something was off?
Yes, I did. I was raised in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. My mom is an immigrant from the Philippines, and she came here for school. She went to American University to get a master's degree, and she met my father, my birth certificate father, who was a white American of primarily English and Irish descent. The Philippines is the most Catholic country on the planet per capita. And my dad was Irish Catholic, so I went to parochial Catholic school and all the way through Jesuit college. Catholicism was a huge part of my upbringing. I raised my kids Catholic. I was on the board of the biggest Catholic church in D.C. I was a Eucharistic minister. I was named after the Blessed Mother. Like the Catholicism is huge in my life. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, my dad, who is on my birth certificate, never even finished college. And I was an excellent speller. I was winning spelling bees. I was a straight A student all the way through college. And I thought to myself as a child, what am I doing in this family? Why am I so not like anyone else in this family? Why am I smarter than my father? And I'm only 8 years old. And that was something that perplexed me. And when I had my DNA test discovery, a lot of puzzle pieces came together.
Tell us about your discovery. How did you make this discovery, and what was the road that led to it for you?
Yeah, well, I was gifted a DNA test. I was not going to ever do one. I didn't feel it was necessary. And I was speaking at the largest mixed race conference in the US, which is called Mixed Remixed in Los Angeles. And 23andMe was a corporate sponsor, gave all the speakers free DNA tests. I took the test and I opened the envelope and it said, Maria, you are half Southeast Asian and half Ashkenazi Jew. I thought there was a mistake because I didn't even know very many Jewish people. I had no Jewish people in my family up until that point. My dad had passed by that point. So I contacted one of his sisters and I said, do we have any Jewish ancestry in our family? And she said, oh, no, you've read Cousin Charlie's genealogy. No, we don't have any. And then I called my mom and I said, Mom, can I come over? Are you home today? And she lives about 20 minutes from me. I went to her house. I said, Mom, I took a DNA test. And she said, oh, those aren't very accurate. And I said, Mom, did you forget that I'm a lawyer who helped get a man off of death row based on DNA evidence? She burst into tears and she said, I'm not talking about this. And I said, oh, yes, you are. And I went full lawyer on her, sat her down, and I said, I get 5 minutes, Mom. What do you know about my biological father? And she said, oh, it was a 50-50 chance. I was flying back to the Philippines to tell my parents I was marrying your dad. And I stopped in Seattle to visit my cousin who was in university there. And we went to a party and, oh, I don't want to talk about this. And I said, oh, Mom, you are going to talk about this one time and then we don't have to talk about it anymore. What do you remember about this guy? And she said, oh, he had something to do with the university. And I said, well, was he a student? And she said, no. And I said, was he an English professor? Because that would make my life make a lot more sense. Said, yes, I think so. And I said, no, you don't know, do you? And she said, no, I don't know anything about it. And I'm leaving and I'm never talking about this again. And she ran in her room and shut the door. So she came out after about 5 minutes and I said, Mom, I'm going to find him with or without your help. Do you want to know when I find him? And she said, no. And don't ever talk about this again. And I said, okay. So it took me about a year to find him. There was one first cousin on the 23andMe inside system.
Okay.
And she didn't respond to me right away because her husband was very ill. And then her brother found out about this match and contacted me. And he facilitated a meeting with my biological father, who was at that time 86 years old. He saw a picture of my mom that I sent from that era. And he said, oh, maybe she's cute.
And by the way,
Like, oh.
Maria, what year was this?
It would have been 1962 that I was conceived, but the year this happened, it was 9 years ago. So I'm not very good.
So that was
2017.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he agreed to do a DNA test. I had 23andMe ship him one. He did it, and it was 100% match that he was my father.
All this time, was your mother thinking maybe the man I married isn't your birth father? Is it any thought that she had that was
She
possibility?
was a person through, I think, her age, her generation, and her culture who lived in deep denial and just hoped for the best. And she said it was a 50-50 chance. Apparently she was having physical contact with both of these guys at the same time. She found herself pregnant My dad wanted to marry her, and she took the offer. She didn't even tell the other guy, my biological father, that it was a chance. There was a chance that
Well, back
he.
then, nobody predicted that this tech would be available. DNA tests, being able to identify this kind of thing, that they'd be an at-home thing. There'd be no reason for you to seek out a paternity test on your own, but to
Yes.
do a consumer DNA test, that's not something, back then was ever envisioned as real life.
That's right. And because Filipino genes, at least in terms of skin color, are so much more dominant than white, I look more, people thought I looked like her. But in reality, my features favor my biological Jewish dad. And
Wow.
it is very rare to find a Filipino Jew who is not a
Mm.
convert, especially. There is a synagogue in Manila, but I've been on a 9-year search to find a Filipino Jew that I could talk to about this. I've joined a group of Asian Jews, and met with a Filipino rabbi, but she converted. And Lisa Brenner, who you mentioned, was someone I met recently, and her husband, she says, is a Filipino Jew who she said she'll introduce me to. I haven't met him yet, but I'm anxious to meet him.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Did you meet her at one of her showings of her movie?
I went to a conference for NPEs called Untangling Our Roots last month in April. Well, this month now. And she showed her film there, and then we had a Q&A afterwards, and I approached her after she spoke and told her how grateful I was that her movie, One Big Happy Family, featured a blended Filipino-American family, which I don't know very many of those. Growing up in Washington, D.C., there's not a huge Filipino community here. So I told her I was half Jew and I was trying to meet a Filipino Jew. And she said, well, my husband. And so it was a really great conversation.
Right, and you had so much in common.
Yeah, we
But,
really
by
do.
the way, was that conference in Utah?
No, it was in Atlanta this year.
Because I know the people, I believe, that run that conference.
Yeah, it's
and I
right
know they.
Right to Know in the Association of Adopted Families. I forgot what the acronym means, but it's every 2 years. I've been to all 3 of them. And next it will be in Seattle in 2028.
And I believe they do have a booth at Roots Tech, if I'm not.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
something, Maria, you should go to if you have the time, at the conference in Salt Lake City in March every year.
Hey, I will. I will.
Misty's going to be there. She was there last year. Well, she wasn't there this year. I go there every year, and I
Okay,
represent.
I'll put that on my schedule. I'd like to do that. And as you know, because you did some research on my biological father, he's a super interesting guy. It turns out that he was on multiple movies
Right.
and TV shows I'd watched over the course of my life, which was just so crazy that I'd watched him on the big and small screen without even knowing it.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break, and after the break, we're going to talk about this and you're meeting your birth father for the first time. So we'll be right back with Finding Family DNA. This is Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com. Sometimes the missing piece of your life is a person you've never met. For over 2 decades, our team of expert investigators and genealogists at BirthParentFinder.com has relied on the power of DNA and genetic genealogy to reconnect thousands of families separated by time, distance, and circumstance. Visit BirthParentFinder.com and begin your journey today. Your family isn't lost. It's waiting to be found. We have with us Maria Leonard Olsen, who has just the most interesting story about meeting her birth father for the first time. And Maria, let's hear about that first meeting and how it happened.
Yeah, okay. So I had sent his nephew a lot of information about me because in researching for a book that's coming out that I wrote, I learned that many bio dads are afraid that the children want money. So I wanted them to know that I was successful. I didn't need any money and I just wanted some health information and I wanted to meet him once. And if that's all he was capable of, that would be just fine with me. He lived in San Diego. I live in Washington, D.C. So we arranged for me to fly out there. He not only was an actor, but Sports Illustrated and 60 Minutes featured him as the best horse handicapper at the Del Mar Racetrack in San Diego. So he and I met at the Del Mar Racetrack. And I placed some bets. He gave me some advice. He has a whole syndicate of people. Well, he did when he was alive, of people who bet with him because he was really good at studying the horses and the jockeys and making good calls. So we met there. He has a great sense of humor. He's loquacious, gregarious, and I could see a lot of my characteristics in him. He just is a fantastic storyteller, and having been involved in big motion pictures like Spartacus, Norma Ray, he had great stories about old Hollywood, and he just regaled me with all kinds of stories. He said I reminded him of his sister. He also played for one NFL football team, which happened to be my team, the Washington then Redskins. And he just blew me away with his stories. And I just felt so lucky to see physical characteristics between us. We had the same tooth out of place. We had the same eyes, same dimples. We both have these weird dimples under on our chins that I've never seen on another person. And I just was enamored with him from the start. And over the 8 years I got to know him, I'd fly out there at least once a year. We talked on the phone weekly for a long time and then monthly. And he died last year. But before he died, I had visited with him so often and really got to know him. And we just had so much in common. And my son, who's also an actor, was living in LA and came with me to meet Jerry Okeneff, that's his name, my bio dad, and we met a couple times and they shared stories about their experiences in Hollywood. My daughter, who lives in Chicago, never met him, but I had a great experience. But in researching for my book, the majority of NPEs I meet do not have good experiences because these are secrets for a reason. People are invested in keeping these secrets secret.
And
So
Maria, you are so fortunate. That's what we're going to talk about next, because we work so many cases, just like thousands of cases. And we'll tell you that I can't give you a percentage of how many work out like yours, but it's really not many. And I would say the reason why yours worked out so well is because, one, Jerry didn't have any other kids.
correct,
Jerry wasn't married, correct?
correct.
That has a lot to do with it. We've
It
had
does.
episodes, and Misty will tell you, the one heartbreaking one was this guy. He was in Orange County, California. We found this birth father, never knew he had a daughter. And when he found out, he was so taken back, and he had a relationship with her for a few months. And then his wife said, no more.
Yeah.
I don't want this anymore. And I forgot what episode there was. It was Bethany, I believe, Misty. We all worked that case, and the poor woman really didn't get what she wanted because she wanted the relationship with her birth father. She didn't really have a father. And then for some reason, and you can watch that episode, and we actually just recently shared the Patreon portion of that on our YouTube channel. But it's really sad that happened. And in your case, you are so fortunate. What, eight years with him, basically?
We had 8 years together. I mean, I do know I'm fortunate, and I have a sense of survivor's guilt. When I talk to other NPEs, I hold back because I hear so many stories of woe. For my book, I interviewed hundreds of people about their DNA test discoveries, and the vast majority ended badly.
Yeah. It's sad. It really is because especially I think the way you went about it was really great, that you said that you explained that your most important priority was health history. You just wanted to meet him once. You didn't put heavy expectation on it. But even we find when there is no expectation put on it, you can't account for that variable that is the birth parent and how they're going to react. And it can be such a difficult experience to process for the person that is a product of being an NPE or who is adopted to go
Yeah.
through that journey. So you're definitely blessed, and I'm very happy for you. You got that
Yeah.
semblance of closure and that relationship with him, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm still very close with my cousins
I was gonna
through
ask
this
if you were
via
close with his
cousins.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have a great relationship with them. I stayed at one of their houses when I went to see my son play at open at Red Rocks for Megan Trainor, and, we share so much in common. It's wonderful. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Molly Corrigan's book. She wrote from the perspective of a wife of a man who was contacted by a biological daughter, and
Oh.
she used to have a podcast and a website, but I think she got so much hate from
Oh.
NPEs that she stopped her podcast and her website.
Oh, that would have been a valuable perspective for the relationship building for people that are products of NPE relationships, just
Yeah,
having
the
that
book's still there, but
I'm
not the
gonna
podcast.
what's her name again? Could you tell me it again?
Molly Corrigan,
Oh.
Corrigan. I interviewed her for my book, and she has a lot of helpful information, and even if you disagree, I don't think she deserved the criticism that she received.
Right.
And it's a shame that there's some animosity in the NPE world. It really is, because everyone has a different story. And in our business, Misty and I know we appreciate every single story. Every story is different. We don't judge people. People handle these things differently. I'm just trying to think of one case in particular. Shanna, Misty.
Yes.
Uh, Shanna found out later that her birth father was her mother's stepfather. How about that one?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the trauma that she went through after she found that out was so horrific.
That
And
is
she really never recovered from that. I don't know if I told my audience that, but I know she does watch these episodes, and I do keep in contact with her, but the trauma that she's had over these years, it's been pretty brutal. And
yeah.
like I said, you are very fortunate, and no one should be jealous of you and resent you for just having it work out so well.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my story like I did in a recent TEDx talk about, the risks of taking DNA tests. I tell it so people can have hope that this doesn't have to go a certain way, that help is available for everyone in this community. There wasn't a whole lot out there, 9 years ago when I was going through this, but now there is.
There's a lot of support and resources for people that are seeking it, even if they wanna go the route of a professional therapist. There's a lot that specialize in NPE incidences and
Yes.
adoption, and it's great that that is available now because it's so prevalent. Like you said, people are taking these tests, people are doing it for fun, people are discovering these surprises, and it is great to warn people that, it's not just spitting in the tube. You may open Pandora's box. That's something that people
Right.
do need to be aware of.
And as a lawyer, my book and my TEDx talk cover the legal implications that are not on the testing company's websites
Right.
because they market it as a fun family gift, but this has implications for privacy, which most people are aware of, but also in life insurance, long-term healthcare insurance, inheritance, immigration, law enforcement. Like
Right.
anyone in my bloodline, I could be a genetic informant on them without really meaning to.
Mhm. That's
And
that's
by the
that's it.
way, Misty's other job is she works with law enforcement on these types of
I was
cases.
gonna say, professionally, I'm a genetic genealogist for law enforcement, so you're 100% right about that. There are
Yeah,
further reaching implications than just spitting in a tube to find out how Irish you are. There's a lot more
exactly.
to it than just that. Yeah.
True.
So, Maria, I have a couple other questions.
Yeah.
So you would, you- let's say you never took this DNA test. Obviously, you would
Mhm.
have no knowledge of the NPE factor, but do you feel better as a person today that you took this test knowing what you know now?
I do, because my relationship with my biological father was a very difficult relationship. And I am grateful that I had another chance at a father daughter relationship as an adult. So it's different. And it explained why I was so unlike my dad who raised me. I believe that identity is a porous concept, that we get to choose our identity. And while, because Judaism is as much a culture as a religion, I don't think I'll ever really feel culturally Jewish. I am excited to have another facet to to who I am. I went to Israel. I get invited to a lot of Jewish celebrations now. I'm learning as much as I can about Judaism, but I'm not going to convert. I just want to learn more, and I'm the type of person who wants to learn for the rest of my life, and I find this fascinating. I have had Jewish people say really weird things to me, like, "Well, we are the top 1% intellectually speaking in the world, and you are one of the chosen people," and I just don't know what to say about that.
Well,
Or
I'm Jewish, and I've never said that to anybody, and, I, look, I've been to Israel. I grew up, as a Reform Jew, and when I got married, my wife and I raised our kids in the conservative movement. All my
Mhm.
kids were B'nai Mitzvah, and, my middle daughter had a Jewish wedding, but we're not that religious. We have a lot of Jewish friends, we have a lot of non-Jewish friends, and I grew up in a town called Skokie, Illinois. I don't know if you know where that is.
No.
Right outside Chicago. It was where the neo-Nazi party was supposed to march in 1976.
Oh my
It
gosh.
never happened because the state Supreme Court shut it down because it would incite violence. Um, and it never happened in that they made a movie about it. But Skokie's Jewish population when I was growing up was probably 40 to 50%, but it was half Jewish and half Catholic. We had the synagogues and the churches, the big Catholic churches, all right near each other. So the Jews and the Catholics got along famously. And when you would go to a Catholic a service, there really wasn't that much difference, except the Old and New Testament. That's we looked at it and goes, well, this is kind of the same, but they don't mention Moses and we don't mention Jesus. But I I believe religion is very personal, and I don't judge people on their religion unless they intend to do harm. So
Right.
that way my audience doesn't get mad at me. And like I said, we never talk about religion. But as far as, you know, your mother, obviously she did the right thing by, she could have gone a different way with this. Um, but we don't talk about that because she gave you life. She gave you a great life. And obviously in the last 8 years leading up to 2024, everything changed for you, and it was for the better, right?
Yes, and I know that a lot of people in my situation are faced with continuing denial, narcissism. A lot of issues arise between the discoverer and the original family or the mother. My mom came to accept that I grew to love my biological father. She blessed me talking about it, writing about it. In the end, she passed also last year. She was ultimately happy that I was happy. She didn't wanna have any contact with Jerry, but she was happy for me, and I'm grateful for that, and I was able to forgive her because in 1962, the options were not great for women, and women today have a lot of options, but not then, especially as an immigrant who
Handicap.
wanted to stay in the US and as a Catholic, and, I'm grateful to her. I wonder sometimes what it would have been like to be raised in LA where there are more Asians and to be raised by this really ebullient man who was so much fun instead of my alcoholic, violent dad who raised me. But, I'm grateful for all the opportunities I've had and that Jerry was still alive when I made the discovery and that he welcomed me. He had a partner of 40 years, a woman who, was initially circumspect about my motives, but I came to love her too, And it really did work out. And I am a person who uses my life challenges to help other people. And so my most popular book, 50 After 50, Reframing the Next Chapter of Your Life, is an Amazon bestseller. And I did a TEDx talk about that too, I'm now 13 years sober. I am divorced. I was an empty nester. I was living alone for the first time in my life at age 50. But I turned all of that into a way of helping others going through similar issues. I'm in AA. I sponsor a lot of women, and I will continue to use anything that I've moved through to help other people who are still just at the beginning.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. And what a life mission to turn everything around and to make it about supporting others in your community, whether it's as being a woman or, as being somebody in recovery. That's just a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as I always ask my guests on this show toward the end, is there a message you have out there for people that went through something similar to what you did as far as being an NPE and the DNA surprise?
Yes. My message, if you are still struggling, is that there is a lot of help available. As Misty mentioned, there are many therapists being trained to help NPEs. There are many support groups online for this that you can join anonymously if that's what you prefer. There are lots of books, TED Talks, articles. This is not new. There are thousands of people going through similar things. The other thing is, we each get to decide who we are. We are not defined by our parents' actions or other people's comments or judgments. You get to decide. And I believe that your identity can change as you move through life, even if you don't have a DNA test discovery. I identified primarily as a mother when my children were young. That they're adults now. I don't primarily identify as a mother anymore. I identify more as a writer, public speaker, attorney, a mentor. So you get to decide. Don't give away your power, and no one has the ability to make you feel inferior without your consent. That's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote, and I believe it.
Well said, Maria. And by the way, Misty, would she be a great speaker at Rootstock?
She would be absolutely great speaker at Roots Tech.
Nominate me. I'd love to.
Yeah.
I will. I will talk to them and see what they think. I know they book these things well in advance. So, Misty, do you have any more questions for Maria? I have a couple of things I
No,
want
I
to ask
just
you.
want to say it was a pleasure having you, and it was great listening to your story and your enthusiasm and, just you. It was wonderful. So thank you
Yeah.
for coming on.
Thank you, Misty.
And Maria, so I want to ask you, how did you find birthparentfinder.com and what made you decide to include that in the reference section in your upcoming book?
I did extensive research. I mean, almost for 9 years about any resource available that could help an MPE or donor conceived or adoptee find their parents. And you do such great work that you came up pretty early in my research. And so I kept an ongoing resource list. I believe I may have the most comprehensive resource list that I will put on my website concurrent with the publication of my book. There wasn't enough room even to put it in the book. So I put some of them, yours being one of my favorites, in the book, and then a dynamic resource list that I will continue to update on my website. So I'm not going to put it up yet until I have a publication. So you can learn more about me at marialeonardolsen.com with links to my TEDx talks and everything I've talked about today.
Right. Tell us about your book name and when it's coming out.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of a long book title. So it's called Before and After the DNA Test. But the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Genetic Privacy, Medical Risks, and Family Secrets. It will be published by Bloomsbury Publishing in January 2027.
And then you
Congratulations.
can get that on Amazon, I would imagine.
Yes, it's available for pre-order now. Mhm.
Well, I can't wait to read your book. And I guess this is probably the 6th book that mentions our company name. And that And there's some of them actually dedicated a couple chapters to finding their family. And like I said, there's other people that have our story in their brain and they haven't gone public yet. And when those stories do, there'll probably be a movie about it. But we can't talk about that.
Yeah, you guys are doing great work. I really applaud you. It's
And I
amazing.
appreciate it. It's a lot of work. We always say it's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking, it's nerve-wracking. We goes through our highs and lows. We have to deal with emotions, and that's what we do best, and that's what we're known for. And we always check reviews, and Google messes things up sometimes, but I think they got it right when it comes to describing birthparentfinder.com. And we have a great team, and I am so proud of us. I started this company in 2006, and it just grew. It's still a boutique company. We don't have a lot of people working with us, but I don't want it to have. I don't want it to be like ancestry.com. There's no reason for that, and I love those people, but I just want to keep it small. I see them every year at Rootstech, and again, Maria, if you can make it to Rootstech, I will discuss it with them. I do have the media meetings that I get involved with, and I'll ask them to reach out to you and possibly be a keynote speaker in the future.
Yeah, send them a link to my TEDx talk. That
Yes.
should help.
That was a great
certainly
talk.
will. And on
Thank
that
you.
note, thank you, Misty. Thank you, Maria. And again, thank everyone for watching another episode of Finding Family DNA, and we'll see you next time.